Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are seeing the little link below, you can join the conversation there in Zoom. If you're here as an attendee and you're looking at all these panelists and you'd like to be one, you can. All you have to do is show up early. So we open the doors at 6. You don't have to show up at 6, but we start at 6 and we kind of meander through lots of conversations as we kind of drink our coffee and tea and get up to speed. At 6:40, we hand out the Discord link. It's the only time you can get access to our Discord. Over 800 people are continuing to talk about this from day to day. And then at 6:42, we start the mic checks. And once we do the mic checks, we're closing the panel for the day. We will open it on Fridays and Saturdays in the second hour for educators, but outside of that, we usually keep it all shut. So come in a little early and have your mic checked. Just make sure you have good internet, good video, and good audio, and we'll go from there. The first hour is general session, and today we're actually kind of going back into our pattern today, where the second hour is some kind of vertical. So it's something specific. Today we're going to be talking about education in the second hour. First hour, though, is your questions, and so we have some questions coming in. We'd like more. Your job as an attendee is to ask questions. This is one of the few shows that you actually are the producer. What you ask and what you vote on drives the run of show for all of us. So really depending on you to decide what you want us to talk about. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Chris. Chris, can you start with some questions?
I could start with some questions, and interestingly enough,
actually, I have something else before we
daily.
I know. See, I start going.
I'm gonna from now. I'm just gonna say, "Are you sure?"
You're gonna go on strike? Yeah.
First words will be, "Are you sure?"
And I'll say, "No, I'm not. I'm not sure." One thing that Kev brought up was the Microsoft and some Google did a launch for the Pixel 5, and we savaged it the other day. We were not impressed. Microsoft has done another one, their launch for the Surface, and so I thought it might be good for us. Does anyone have ability to play that in? I can play it in, not in a pretty way, but go ahead, Jeffrey. Go ahead and play a little bit of that. So this took a much different route, which is that they're actually looking straight at you. Amazing. What a thought. To actually look at the viewer while they're talking. And this is something that even I can't.
Each of us is working right now, or learning, or teaching.
You want sound or no?
For sure, how
That's
we're
fine.
connecting is changing, and it continues to change. Between Surface and the amazing ecosystem partners that we have, we're all here to deliver on new Windows products.
Under music.
Go ahead and jump.
This
Go ahead and jump forward a little bit.
empower every single person in every organization on
It
the
does look a
planet.
little bit dark in that scene, though.
Yeah,
and
white
new
is hard.
updates to Surface Pro X.
White's not what I would pick as a
Holiday
background.
Surface is getting even
That's
better.
the one.
No.
With
I'm
new
the only one that did.
Over here.
experiences,
I'm over here.
Longer battery
There we go.
life, as well as new configurations to deliver even more performance. Take a look.
It's the new iPhone 12.
11
going.
double less.
Maybe a little further.
Yeah. It's a classic ad.
Go to people.
Go to more people.
She's looking at you.
Studio mics, really?
We're seeing more developers
Yep.
create apps
Tablet
that
was
are
totally looking
optimized
at
for
me.
Windows on ARM. All of this adds up to overall faster performance and longer battery
So
life.
you can go ahead and stop.
Style and performance.
I like that lower third. That little flip on the lower third is kind of nice.
I thought you didn't like animated lower thirds.
I don't like them in general, but that one looked nice.
Not enough sparkle in the eyes. I don't believe them.
So
Yeah, I mean,
what's your take on the physical icon? What's your takeaway of that? Wow. That's
where was the physical? Where was the physical icon?
Well, the
Where was it?
Windows icon. Your tear down of their logo.
Can we go back to? Let's see. I don't know why I'm stuck on it.
I'm trying to find it. Yeah.
It's right on the Surface.
Go back 3 shots. You'll see it.
It's just 4 boxes.
Here it is.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the Windows logo. There.
Yeah.
Windows logo, yeah.
That's fine. It's Windows. It's 4 Windows.
That last gentleman presenters was by far the best this year, in my opinion.
They're all generally more engaged, straight looking down, focused on the
Yeah.
subject matter.
I mean, the hard part, and we deal with the same issue, is getting executives to, you can see this kind of dead eye that they have when they're reading the teleprompter.
Amen.
that is, you know, I think that we're gonna. I mean, and I even work on shows that I'm doing that with, you know, because you just getting executives to remember a lot of text all at one time takes an enormous amount of effort, and it's just it's really hard, and under the time frame that you have them for, you still have to use teleprompters. But I think that I almost went with trying to push for just notes and then just memorize it and just we'll tell you what to say next. But
he's
you have to
doing
really
it.
know
He's,
it. But
he's engaged, and his head's moving a little bit, his body's moving, and some of the others, just like they're a robot, they're like deer in the headlights. And having shot
it's hard. It's
thousands
hard,
of
you know.
yeah, it's hard, very hard.
You know, I've spent a lot of time in front of a teleprompter, so I can just jump in and just say it the way I'm going to say it. But even I have glass eyes when I do it, you know, like because you're looking at this thing moving and you can't really blink, you know, away from it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, the gentleman we were just seeing is at least smiling every once in a while. He looks like he's actually engaged with the product that he's telling you about. Where
Right.
some of the others are you know, completely dead eye. Their focus is slightly off, and deer in the headlights.
And really,
like,
what they're
terrified.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to keep up with the teleprompter. You know, like they're just trying to keep up with the text that's coming through. Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, it was just the thought that apart from the engagement to camera, that everything was also subtly socially distanced without actually flagging it. If you look at
Right.
the very opening shot, everybody is in their respective distance space, and yet
Right.
they've framed it to fill the whole image, so it doesn't look like it's odd. There we go.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. There's so much security around every time when we've been doing obviously I was doing a lot of shooting. Every time a talent takes off their mask, it's like no one can walk near them. No one can get it's like this. It's like they're radioactive, you know, and you can't get close to them again until they put their mask back on. Go ahead, Chris.
I know that none of us are fans of teleprompters, but I have a friend.
You can't do it without it. I mean, I'll go, oh, these teleprompters, but you know, I just used one for weeks. You know, like you have to. Go ahead, Chris.
So what I was going to say is, I have a friend, Neil Tanner, who we use, who I think I've mentioned this. He used to prompt for Obama a lot. He traveled with Obama on the campaign trail.
Mhm.
He's awesome, and he's been doing tons of prompting for Apple and stuff out of his house now, and he would be a great guest. I was working with him the other day.
Let's get Courtney, get him. I'll get Michelle, who's our teleprompt operator, and so what was crazy is that we, you know, the shoots I was doing, Michelle was managing it all for me, but I had different prompter operators all the time, and they were coming in from somewhere different, you know, and we just brought them in over Zoom, and it actually worked. If their bandwidth wasn't great, their screen share wasn't as smooth as it needed to be. And I think, you know, one of the things I need to do some research on that to make that work. I think that them piping it through, like figuring out a way to pipe their teleprompt through video, because the text is big enough that it doesn't matter whether it's, you know, high resolution or not. It would have been a smoother experience. And I think it's something I have to work on. But I think having a conversation, I think there's an hour of talking about teleprompter and then also touching on the virtual teleprompt, because it worked really well. They came in, they fill it up, we all see it. And the big thing is that people say, well, you now have automated teleprompting and everything else, but we're making changes all the time.
That's
why
I want to talk to Neil, because he types like the wind, he listens to everything, and he can talk toward all of that skill set.
Yeah, because that's what's amazing is you're sitting there going, oh, that word didn't work, or this paragraph isn't really working, and having someone who's really fast and knows and is in sync with what you're asking for, and just is making those changes really fast is why you hire an operator. You know, like is not the going up like this is not the why you hire the operator.
That's
it's
that's like 5% of the job.
The big thing is being able to surgically and understand the app really well. I need to change the margins. I need to change the size. You know, all those things. Yeah. So we'll work on that for a second hour. Go ahead, Bill.
I just wonder why people think that this skill, which is a skill, is less important than learning to ride a bicycle. I mean, you wouldn't just take a kid who'd never seen a bicycle, throw him on there, and then throw him out. I've
teleprompted.
It'd be fun to watch.
I've teleprompted for some pretty important folks, but in the last minute, we had one where we had an executive for a large company, who just decided they needed a teleprompter. We had to we had about 8 minutes to wire up a the teleprompter was already there, but it was set up for a kind of a to be able to see people on the other side, not to actually teleprompt. We have about 8 minutes to rewire it and pull up a teleprompt, get the script, and start running. And so the you can do it, but again, if he had had any adjustments, it would have taken me a long time to make the changes. But you can do it, and I think that, to your point, Bill, I think that everyone should know how to make that work.
And rehearse it and get some correction and discover that you're doing things incorrectly, and your brain has to get into the I'm looking at this and reading this, but I'm trying to talk to people.
Well, definitely practicing it. Practicing doing your own rehearsal is important. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed about was it Renee, right? When he was on, he had it wasn't the fact he was reading, because he wasn't reading to talking to us, but he had a look in his eyes that just kind of felt like it's hard to explain, but if you just watch it, you kind of see it. And if he is reading from a teleprompter in his videos, then
he does.
Like I said, it's just my point being the eye position, how your eyes are reacting can sometimes make it look like you're actually in that situation.
I think that Renee does it really well. Like, he cuts it really tight and he does small segments at a time. And so but yeah. And that's the hard part we find with live, taking YouTubers who are used to doing that. Renee does it really well because he's on a lot of live stuff, but people say, oh, I got a YouTuber that's going to host the show. And we're like, oh, I don't know how that's going to turn out. We literally had a YouTuber. We were doing one where they had to hold 40 minutes of, at after some debates, not in this election, the last election. And they'd hold 40 minutes, to talk. And they literally got 20 minutes in and just needed a break. They said, we just got to cut. Like, they just couldn't think of other things to say. Like, they're so used to like working out. And these are very popular YouTubers, and they just are used to writing it all, putting it all together. But the idea of doing this and just kind of, continuing to vamp is a skill in its own. Anyway, go ahead, Chris. Let's go into the questions.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Mr. Comfort says, is there a popular trusted go-to external SSD that is recommended for anything from use with an ATEM Mini Pro to the Pocket 4K 6K to the Atomos Ninja V? I know this answer.
You're talking about in a finished one, like
external
like this.
SSD.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
well, then there's this, which is just a SSD straight on.
Right.
So you have to decide which one you're defining, Chris.
I think I'm trying. I don't know yet. I don't know my exact use. I think I was just more interested in, are there some really solid go-tos that people generally pick for these things that are currently available?
The one that Jeff Francis is holding up.
I can't.
T5, T1.
So is the T5 still available? That's partly what inspired my question, because I remember I was listening in one day. I wasn't on the panel, but I was listening in there saying that the T7 doesn't work well, but the T5s do, but the T5s are not available anymore, or are they?
I think you can still get the T5s on this. These are, for everyone listening, these are the Samsung T5s and T7s. The Samsung T5s work great with your Blackmagic cameras. The Samsung T7s do not. The Samsung T7s, though, are great. This is one I keep around, two terabytes on this guy, relatively inexpensive, super easy to use. But the T5s are what I get for the cameras. So it just depends on, because I don't think, do the T5s come in 2 terabytes? I don't think they do. I think you need to get the 7 if you want 2 terabytes. But I get the 1 terabyte T5s and I buy them like chiclets. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think there is a period when these technologies roll out, and I think the T7 was one of them, where you may have compatibility problems, because I was one of the people, I think the same thing. The T5 always works. The T7, problems. But that's not to say that they're not going to work with the firmware or something and fix that. So always check the current boards and what people are saying. And these problems go away.
And the one thing is I'm using this T7 as my iPhoto library as well as my Final Cut library. And so if I need to walk around, move around, I mean, obviously I double it. I have 2 of these, so they're synced. But I'm able to move that library very easily and quickly to whatever drive I'm going at. It works really well. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say that chiclets are delicious.
They are, aren't they? So yeah, I think that so for me, the Samsung T5 for the cameras, T7 for general storage and delivery, and then the Samsung EVOs are what I use a lot for raw. Like we have a lot of hyperdecks, and so to do records, and then we literally, as Chris can tell you, deliver these
Yeah,
like tapes.
I still have a pile of them.
I need that pile back.
Okay, so in general,
soon
it's a
you'll be nearby.
Samsung thing. Phil's showing SanDisk also on his screen.
Yeah, what do you
We
think
had
of those?
or something?
We had a lot of trouble with Samsung in the past, and so we stopped using them.
I had a hard time. I know for me, their SD cards crash my Windows computer every time I plug it into the reader. Every time.
I just know that for I have probably 50 of these that are SanDisks, these raw, and we don't use them anymore because they had failures during long write times, and it was something when we dug into it, it turned out to be a SanDisk issue, and so we stopped buying SanDisk. I will admit that I still buy their SD cards, which I don't have any trouble with, but
yeah,
I don't use their SSDs because of the errors that we had in long write times.
Okay.
And I am finding something with this T7 that I think is related to that, which is that if you move 600 gigs over 600 gigs from a T5 to T7, the last, like once it gets over like 550 or 600 gigs, it just slows down, like really slows down. Like it's like, so it's going super fast and it thinks it's going to take a certain amount of time. And the last, anything over every 50 gigs after the first 550 or 600 is as much as the first 600 took. Like is
that thermal maybe?
I don't know. Because I know that two T5s to each other don't do that. But on a T7, I know that it's going to get to a 600 gigs and then it's going to start just plummeting, in its speed. And it may be that it gets to it's got some thermal thing. But I think I have a theory that it's connected to the issues that the Blackmagic camera has with it. So I wouldn't use a T7 as a shooting thing. We use them all the time because that's the easiest thing to get. If you go to Best Buy or whatever, you can buy T7s. You can't buy.
If it's an index caching thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Something weird like that.
It writes after that fine, or reads after that fine, but it just takes a long time to get on that last little bit, and I haven't quite figured it out. Anyway, next question.
Cool, thank you.
The next one's from me, and I was going to say, do you think there's any reason, either technically or politically, and I know you don't like talking about politics, but still, that the next presidential debate could not be virtual? I know it can be technically done, but since one of the candidates apparently has COVID,
I don't.
Is there a reason they can't do that?
There's no technical reason they couldn't.
Of course. I was being.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, it would probably be way easier to do it technically. I mean, and I'm going to guess that there's a lot of fiber between both locations. Both candidates have a lot of fiber that would support that kind of thing. So I don't think that there'd be any technical limitations. They probably look good, they probably look better and sound better from home than they would in that stage, because the stages tend to be a disaster. And you wouldn't have to deal with all the audience people. So who I find annoying. The political issue is always, are they getting notes, during the thing? So, that's what they're going to be like. There's always this big thing. If someone has a hearing aid, if someone has all these different pieces become a big issue. Are they getting fed answers,
Because
for
they
that
have to
process?
be wearing an IFB to hear the other candidate. So
They don't have to, but it would definitely be.
Who knows what else is getting mixed into that?
So I think it's all political as to whether it would be acceptable, for someone to do that. That's it.
Apparently, the place where they did the last debate had been dedicated or built as a. Never mind. Okay, next question. Phil, hey Phil, says pro presenter question: has anyone ever made a ticker with live text data feed scrolling across the bottom, like from an RSS feed? Was it tricky?
And are you looking for RSS or are you looking for comments, Phil?
Well, we're going to pull. It's going to be a feed. It'll be some kind of a feed from a online document.
Mm-hmm.
That's
somebody, not hard.
Another producer. I've been messing with it. Pro presenter just.
Oh, I don't know about pro presenter. The thing to remember about a ticker is pro presenter is a lot of work for that. you can do a web page and just do it over black. And
I
then
know.
just,
Key it
and
out.
just key it out, and it's and then you take the web page and you just share. You just push that out full screen. And that's what we've done for years. You know,
No, I've
so
done it in Mimo Live. I've done it in a lot of things.
we just do it in web pages.
Yeah,
like we literally just do web pages that are scrolling, because then you have a web developer that just has to do it and give it over black, and it just goes grab it. It's so easy. Like it's not just a little computer that does it. It's super simple.
The requirement here is Pro Presenter, so I'm trying to.
Oh, got it. Okay, that is a requirement. Go ahead, Garrett.
Yeah. Phil, are you on Pro Presenter 7 or Pro Presenter 6?
7.
Which 7?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm looking at their documentation, and it says it's not currently available.
Well,
right
it
now,
is. If you make a text box, you can create link text, and then down there you can say RSS. It's just it's not scrolling, and it's just not behaving like you would expect. So
I just popped open Pro Presenter 6 on my computer and did a NASA feed real quick, and it was super easy and worked right away. So
it's not like they look like they've changed it significantly from 6 to 7.
I would maybe reach out to them and see what they're saying at Renewed Vision, if that's something they're currently supporting. But with the new rollout, there's been lots of problems with Pro Presenter that I've seen.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Feature reduction.
Next question.
Jeff Francis says, in search of an inexpensive Dante-enabled desktop microphone with push to talk for accompanyist to perform communications. To accompanyist to performer communications when musicians are physically distanced.
A talkback mic.
Yeah, it's a talkback mic. I've got a 57 on a stand or 58 on a stand with a foot switch and into an Avio, one of those little Dante adapters, but just looking if there's something more elegant. So what we've done is we've moved for singers and woodwinds and brass, we've moved the pianist into another room, and they're actually playing disc clavier. So we take the sound generator output of the disc clavier and pipe that into the hall. So we have old school analog cameras and monitors, so we have no latency in video. And the Dante audio takes the hall microphones so the pianist can hear the singers without wearing headphones. They have a speaker in the room with them and they play just normally. And then this is just a way in rehearsal for the pianist to talk to the performer, because there's no actual microphones miking up the piano.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. I don't know what the price of this is, but I've heard that Audio Technica has a little base for gooseneck mics, similar to what you would find on a podium or for a conference. And it's Dante enabled, and it has a PTT push to talk switch on it. But again, I don't know what the price range on that would be. And if you're talking about Dante, it's probably upwards of 300, 400 US probably.
The most elegant are the Studio Technologies. That's what they build ones for that. So you have the mic going into it. They have a Dante interface, and you can program the buttons to do they can be push to mute, push to activate. There's little dip switches on the bottom, but the Studio Tech ones we've used a lot of them for that. They're announcer consoles, right? And then you can build them so that you could even have 2 or 3. A couple of them have 3 or 4 buttons, and you can have you can program like this one's to everyone, this one's to this group, this one's to that group. And again, they have both analog as well as AES as well as Dante versions of all of those things. And then you can also get ones that are belt packs with Dante, and they can have them there. So. And then there's also, of course, on the other side of that, Rolls makes, a Rolls, and other folks make, the Rapcos and, everything else that make foot switches, to run the mic through. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, looking at the Audinate site, there's probably half a dozen or 8 different manufacturers that I've never heard of that make these Dante-enabled desktop, conference microphones. So
Studio Technologies is the industry standard. Like that's just what you see everywhere.
I saw that one Mickey's talking about, but I haven't actually found a place to purchase it, so I don't know the price of it. So I'll take a look at Studio Technologies.
That one, or one of the Model 21 announcer console from Studio Tech. I have a link here. I'll post it.
Yeah, it's there, but they're everywhere we go. That's what we see. That's why we bought them. Like it was just, and when you get them, they're like little tanks. And so it's a pretty good investment. They are a little bit more expensive though. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm seeing the Audio Technica unit on Marker Tech for 626 US. So an analog like PTT device connected to your Avio might be a better solution, just because of it's an insane amount just like for what it does.
Depends on how much you're using it. Next question.
Lawrence says, on 3 occasions over the last few days, Zoom randomly stopped receiving audio from my chain. Levels are normal on Zoom H6, different Zoom, and audio hijack, but no more levels into Zoom. The only solution is to quit or relaunch the Zoom app. Things have been solid for months. Any ideas what this is?
So, Lawrence, did it happen during an episode or right at the beginning when it's logging in?
It happens randomly. Yesterday at office hours, it was after 55 minutes in when I tried to answer your question. It happened 20 minutes in rehearsal the day before, and then another time after 40 minutes. And I tried hours yesterday to make it crash. It was solid again. I updated Zoom. I have no clue.
Because I know
it's a little nerve-wracking.
I know for me, if I have a USB interface like the Scorpio, I have to restart my computer every single time. In the morning, I always restart my computer because otherwise Zoom will not lock on to the USB interface again. And so it gets, it just goes into some never land where it's looking and can't find it. And so I just found the easiest way to fix that is I get up in the morning and restart my computer, and then it works fine. But there's something with it, and nothing else has that problem, just Zoom. Go ahead, Garrick.
Yeah, I've experienced the same thing 3 times. And
what interface are you using?
What I'm using a Motu M2.
So it's not just
interface.
like a sound devices issue. Mine are all sound devices, so I'm just trying to figure out if it sounds. But it's a USB interface, and it just suddenly it locks, and it has a big delay where it can't see it.
And the difference between Lawrence and I is that I'm using a MacBook Pro, and for some reason, sometimes my MacBook Pro doesn't charge up, and it slowly depletes over time, and the battery does, and then I notice things start to go crazy on Zoom, and so I plug in another adapter, power adapter, and the audio just stops working. I mean, everything else, it's working everywhere except that it's just not going into Zoom for some reason. And it's also happened after my computer's gone to sleep. So I'm wondering if it could be some kind of weird USB issue or power to the USB issue or something like that.
Yeah, Chris, and then Cosmo.
I've noticed that Zoom with certain apps will occasionally just change audio inputs. Like if I run ScreenFlow, if I start ScreenFlow, sometimes Zoom just says, hey, I want to be on this audio input instead. And I'm wondering if it's some sort of like a voltage spike or something. So question, Lawrence, are you sure that are you sure it didn't change inputs?
Yes, that was the first thing I tried. I went to the Zoom preferences and switched inputs and switched back to hope it would be awake again. But yeah, the tickling didn't work. There was no level in the Zoom meter.
I was also curious, just like maybe we could do this from a show of hands. How many people here either shut down or put to sleep the computer that you are on every morning on Zoom, or do you leave it on 24/7? So first, shut down or put to sleep, hands up, and then on 24/7.
Well, it's both. I mean, I put mine to sleep. Oh, you mean with the screen off? I mean, mine goes to sleep.
If you either shut down or you put the computer, or like a laptop, you close it for the day, whatever.
The reason I say that is that for my computer, from a security perspective, if I don't do something with it in 2 minutes, it'll 2 or 3 minutes or whatever it is, whatever I have it set to, it'll just immediately lock up. I mean, close. Like it won't. My computer, all my computers. Yeah, it does. The iMac just closes it. It actually folds. It's like a folding screen.
So, John Preto, you leave your machine on 24/7, right? When was the last time you shut it off?
Until I run it until it locks up and needs to be rebooted.
That's funny. Hosmuk?
Yeah, I noticed since I think it's 5.3 that sometimes Zoom doesn't pick up my Brio through the USB. And in fact, before this meeting itself, I had to restart my computer for Zoom to pick up the Brio. It's happened to me about 3 times now. And
I will say,
all I can think about is the last update.
Yeah, and all I can say is that I will say this is something behavior that I've seen in the Mac. Our PC, we have 16 PCs that are all tied into rooms, and they don't seem to have any issues. Now they're getting audio through DANTE, and they're on DECLink cards, but they seem to be just humming away for weeks on end. Go ahead, Lawrence, and then Chris.
Yeah, so I will restart my Mac now in the morning before I start office hours. That's what I did this morning. I also updated to, 5.3.1. There was a bug fix update from Zoom a few days ago. So maybe it happened there. It just says bug fixes. So I'll keep you guys in the loop if it happens again.
Now let's keep tracking.
That's what I did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Lawrence, is there a setting in the, I just got the H6 myself and I haven't looked into it, but on my old H4n, I feel like there's a setting where you can tell it to draw power from the USB versus just using battery power maybe. And does that change the way the computer or Zoom, the app reacts to it? Like if you've tried running on battery power instead of drawing power through the USB port?
I'm now doing it through the USB port, and I have been doing that for months, but I can try it with batteries for sure.
It's just a thought. I have no answer for you.
It's a good idea. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Good, Bill.
I back early, I think pre-show, we were talking about things latching on to parts of your operating system and not letting go. And I do have that problem occasionally. If I have to go out and do a WebEx call, and I do maybe one every other week or something like that, I often have to completely reboot my whole system to get everything back under control. It seems like it has some hooks that dig into things.
Yeah, WebEx causes all kinds of problems on a Mac at least. So I'm always like, the moment I get out of a WebEx call, I restart my computer because there's something about it that is not. It's very clingy. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
One other thing is check your echo cancellation. If that H6 is sending audio back into Zoom, it's very possible it could be canceling itself out when it's going into Zoom.
Speaking of echo cancellation, Mickey, did you notice that I'm not gating as much now as I was before the top of the hour?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
That was an experiment. For just as we were talking about this, is I had my speakers opened before the show as an experiment to see, like, does it really make any difference? And then I put my earpiece back in before the show, and obviously it does. When we're thinking about using these for events, when people say, "Oh, I don't want to wear an earpiece," that's the cost. Is that it cutting you off as in that process? Anyway, just another little note. Next question.
James Babbitt from San Diego. Bill Davis's neighbor. Alex, you mentioned seeing the documentary series on the Mandalorian. Any comments about the processes and gear that you see in the documentary? Other viewers might not know about that environment and that technology.
It was great to show. So this was the documentary that showed how they were building a physical version of the ship. So they built a 2-foot version of the Mandalorian ship that, in physical. I used to work with most of the people that were in that video. So it was fun to see John Goodson and obviously John Knoll and talking through it. John Goodson. So he and one other model maker used to build the miniatures for the for Star Wars Episode 1 in the same office, and they would listen to P-51 races. There used to be P-51 races. People would race outside of Vegas, I think. And so there was just this constant, like when they were there, you hear these blah, 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 they'd be doing it while they're making pod races. So that's more nostalgia more than anything else. I did think it was funny that they were talking about the A10 Warthog. If you look at Sobulba's pod, you'll notice that his engines in his little pod, his engines in the back of the engines look a lot like an A10 Warthog, and the back of his pod looks a lot like the front of an A10 Warthog. So anyway, just a note. Anyway, the size makes a difference of the ship. because the thing to notice is how long their runs were. So when I first saw the ship, I was like, that would have had a lot more better detail if it was like 10 feet, rather than 10 feet. You'd end up with more little details in there that you can add, more greeblies. But when you watch the camera move of what the travel has to be in that camera move, you realize that if you made it 5 times bigger, the camera move would have to be 5 times bigger, to pull that off. And so now you end up like when we did, I think that not when we did, but when ILM did some of the model shots for Pirates of the Caribbean, the ship was like 12 feet. And the shots were massive, like they had this huge crane outside to do the shots around a 12-foot ship, because they, had to cover a lot of distance. And so, anyway, so those are, they're really interesting. It is funny that John Knoll talked about the tilting, because we always do. I did a lot of ship shots for Star Wars, so the Queen ship, going out. And one of the things, if you didn't do it, someone would bring it up that when the ship goes past, it has to turn just a little bit. Like that's something we always did. We do it, and you'll always see all the Queen ship shots for episode we always go up, and then it curves. It just does one of these. It just turns a little bit, and you always add a little bit of a twist to it. And that was it makes it feel more live, And so anyway, so I thought that was really interesting. I did, I was looking at it, I was like, it's gonna be hard to roto. There's a lot of stuff back there, but they're good at it now. Other than that, all that stuff looked like, the rig that they built to add axes, genius. And notice that John Knoll built it from scratch. Like, it's not like not just that he wrote, it's not just that he helped write Photoshop or helped create Photoshop. Like, and we've seen him, I've seen John machine things that everything he machines looks like what you could buy it at a store. Like he finishes, it's not just that he does it, he finishes it. And so I already knew he was very mechanically oriented, but watching him build that was fun. That's what by the way, when that shot there, that's up in that's the 3rd floor that George was showing there. That was from the 3rd floor in the main house. I spent a lot of time there. Anyway, that's all I got from that video. But there's, it's a really fun video. I thought that it was nice that they showed more tech. I still think that the missing opportunity for ILM and for they make these that are 17 minutes long. They could literally make this 3 hours and we'd watch it. I think more people would watch. I just think that it's worth. I guess I would say more than ILM, but for all filmmaking, because we're no longer stuck in commercials, because we're no longer trying to package something into a limited supply, every piece of content has all these other related pieces of content that could go out. One movie could generate 20 hours of content. And when you're thinking about long tail of Netflix or the long tail of Apple TV or the long tail of Disney, there's this huge thing of like, every episode of Game of Thrones could have generated 20 hours of viewing, because we're watching all the behind the scenes, and we're watching how that scene broke down, and we're doing, we're people can explore, all of those things. And so I think that, this is like a handful of shots from one thing in there, and it generated 17 minutes, and it could have been 3 hours. And so especially something like this, I think part of the reason they got so detailed is because there's no competitive advantage here. No one's doing that anymore, or almost nobody's doing it. So it's not like they're showing any secrets. Anyway, so it is funny how all those explosions look really fast when it happens. And then, it's all shot at 240 frames a second. So it looks much bigger when it's slower. When the last thing I'll say is there's a shot in episode 1 where the little droid runs across and goes into the engine. And the engine, he gets sucked into the engine, and the whole thing vibrates. The engine vibrating in that was a drill. So we took it outside because we took it out of windward, and because you had to get direct sunlight. Because part of it is you want it to look like direct sunlight. So I had to go out at a certain time of day so that all the shadows match the actual shot. But you needed that much sun because we're shooting 240 frames a second. So it's outside, has to, anyway. So, but they ran a drill. They just took a drill and they just ran it. So but the thing is, you're going through, you only have a couple seconds to run through film when you're doing 240 frames a second. So you hear it get to speed, you hear the speed, and then they just ran a drill and the whole thing just shivers like this. And so it looks really big at 240 frames a second, but it looked like nothing when we shot it. It was just like this little vibration, and that was it. So anyway, But again, all those things could have been content that a lot of us would suck up, especially for this kind of thing. People would just watch it all the time. So I'm always surprised that we've been talking about that for decades, about how much content was created. For even episode 1 had 100 or 200 hours, no, more than that. I mean, there was just hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage shot about behind the scenes that could have been compiled into hundreds of hours of viewing. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say, probably the number one determining factor on the quantity of material that they put out is just the amount of time that it takes to produce 15 minutes worth of content versus 15 hours worth of content. It's not just a longer edit, it's dozens of people looking at it, approving it, scrutinizing it. It's a time suck to put all that stuff out.
It's just that nowadays we have people paying subscription for that, and what you're trying to do is have them hang on to your subscription service as long as possible. To me on Disney Plus, there's nothing worth watching than Mandalorian related material. So if there's not any, if they released shows I only open up my Disney Plus when the new Mandalorians are running. I opened up the one for the behind the scenes of Mandalorian. It was worthless. It was like that was like the worst, most polished poop that I've ever seen, put out, and so it was like completely, not useful. So now I've learned from Disney, the behind the scenes are useless. And the only thing that you should care about is open up for Mandalorian, watch the Mandalorian, and then close your subscription off again, and so.
You don't have a 3-year-old granddaughter who loves Frozen.
I don't. I still would, if they love Frozen, I'd buy them Frozen and then cancel Disney. Go ahead, Chris.
To play it on.
Firstly, the thing that Guy is showing, where is that again? Is that on Disney Plus or is that YouTube? And then also just to reinforce what Alex is saying about the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, I've heard many people, including myself, who said that, the box set for the Lord of the Rings was part of their film school, so not just as an entertainment piece, but an education piece, a very serious education piece.
So the ones that I use for when I teach film, or when I'm teaching film effects and so on and so forth, I use the box set for the Lord of the Rings, Traffic, the Criterion release of Traffic, the Criterion release of Armageddon, the Matrix with the White Rabbit, I'm trying to think of but there's like a whole bunch of them that are the ones that you, and what I would do is I break them, I break those down during classes all the time. The fight scene, the I Know Kung Fu fight scene is it's like an incredible observation of using camera moves to communicate. Like there's so many things about, I'm going to make it more intense. Now I'm going to show you something wide. Now I'm going to show you this. Now I'm going to expose this. And there's, and so you can go through that and spend an hour just looking through that one scene. But you're absolutely right that the behind the scenes are they're really valuable when done well. Anyway, next question.
Sure. The next question comes. Oh, look at that from me. It got voted up. Alex, question to you: will your Office Pod ever be technically indistinguishable from your HomePod?
I don't think it'll be technically indistinguishable, but I think that it will be technically equal to it within probably the next week, because I have to be there now every day. Now that I'm done with my post stuff, I have to be there every day. So I'll probably get it up to speed in the next, I'm trying to get it done over the weekend. I got it close. There's been moments, but I took my camera out. So I'm putting another camera in, and I'm taking that down today. And, and then the lights are up.
Put a lot of time into this.
It's a thing.
Now, will your wife ever get the space back in the house?
No. Next question.
Don't want to talk about that anymore.
Yeah, you don't give up. Possession is 9/10 of the law. You don't once you have the ground, you don't give it up.
All right. Hasmuk says, warm white or cool white? I have a China ball with a CLF, isn't it CFL above
CFL.
me? The CFL, cool white. In South Africa, we also have a warm white CFL, my preferred option for home lighting. What do you recommend?
Go ahead, Bill, and then Kev.
It really only matters if you're going to mix light. The way that white balance on camera, and we're talking about white balance for a camera, you're teaching the camera what to see as white. So if you teach it that white is cool white, things in the upper Kelvin numbers, and you turn on a light source that's in the lower, like 3200 tungsten range, it's going to look yellower and less natural. If you balance everything for tungsten across the board, then tungsten sources will look normal no matter what they are from. But if you open a window, that light will come in looking more blue. So the truth of color balance with lighting is you just have to stick with one and then understand if you add the other what it's going to do.
And it also depends on what effect you're looking for on screen too. If you're looking for a warm, inviting environment, then using filtered light, yellow, is acceptable. It all depends on what it is you're doing.
I'm the talent, so I want to look good.
I mean, as I said, it's mostly where you set the camera. The camera being able to get to that color is important. Go ahead, Chris.
The China balls are typically not quite pure white anyway, right? I mean, those tend to have a warmth to them. Yeah. So even if you put a bright or a pure white or 5600K white inside one of them, it's going to get warm anyway.
Right. Next question.
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to say that. A couple clicks behind. Michael Vosbein from Woodstock, Georgia. So simple question. Are you guys hearing yourselves through your buds or cans or just the feed? Mix minus style?
Mine's mix minus because I'm taking the headphone jack out of my computer right now and pumping it into mine. So I only hear the other side, but you can set it up any way you want. Roscoe and then Chris.
Yeah, I have just a little bit of feedback just so when I first plug in the mic, I know it's on and working.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Chris. I actually monitor. Oh, I'm sorry. Other Chris. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
On my Behringer, I have the option of hearing a zero latency back in of myself, and it's just a mix knob, and I have it about 50-50 because I want to hear when I'm, some kind of feedback of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris?
I would say one of the primary reasons why I'm here all the time is to see and hear myself with other important people. So I definitely want to hear myself. I actually plug into the MixPre and I fold some of that back to me.
And oftentimes I see Chris. Myself. You'll notice if you look over there, sometimes Chris is on mute and he's just going, "Hi there, hi." Anyway, he's got himself pinned and he's just like talking to himself. All right, next question.
Don't you pin yourself? I pin myself. Sky says, "Has anyone seen Summit Events? I think it's an interactive virtual conference software app. Opinions." And then there's a link.
Haven't seen
Summit.events.
I think it's a dressed up
Little
Makana.
candies are back.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mickey shamed me out of my Princess Leia look. So a friend of mine is developing this in Los Angeles. He's long in the event world, and these people that I think it's partnered with are.
So MVS is where we had our system, our virtual system. So they've been working on this for a while. So MVS is Mountain View Staging, and they're great. They're great guys, and so they've got a lot of capacity and production experience. So they've been building up. They've been working on this for a while. I'm not while I work on some events, I'm not a big proponent of events in general. I mean, I don't think that. I think we'll keep on trying that for a while, but as we get better at understanding micro broadcasting for corporations and organizations, we're going to keep moving away from them. Like they're just not going to, the investment's not going to pencil out forever. Just like, it's just not, if you took the money, if you took the $4 million you're going to spend at NAB and you put it into a daily event, daily, you could do 12 hours a day as a corporation for your customers. For $4 million a year, you could do 12 hours a day of great content, conversations, and guiding them and everything else. And so it just, and when corporations actually get their head around that, why would you do these events? Sorry, it's event companies trying to, I mean, and again, I think I feel bad because I'm undermining Peter's thing, but I think I look at all these event things and I do think they're going to be important for a little while because people are still in an old mindset.
This is the virtual version of an event, is it? but I don't
yeah,
know.
but I'm just saying it's a virtual version of an event. But I just don't think that forcing us all to do something over a whole day or a whole whatever, like what people need when they're trying to figure out your content, like what people need is once a week or once a day, they need to be able to come up for a couple hours and ask questions. And that's what happens here, and we're experimenting with that, in that process. It'd be great to have more production value. And once I get out of the productions that I'm in, I'm going to be experimenting with more production value, in this realm. And so, but I think that, what they really need is to figure it out. I mean, you look at something like I'm doing a bunch of HDR work right now, and there's no good content out there for that. like it's just like there's Blackmagic has some videos for Resolve, but most of the stuff is just the blind leading the blind. I mean, you just have to figure it all out. It's like you're groping through the dark trying to figure out which way is up. It's a and so what should be happening is there should be something where people can come up and ask questions like what we're doing, but focused. Anyway, go ahead, Sky, real quick, and then we're gonna move on.
Again, the agency or the coloring house I worked in Burbank was trying to get into HDR, but again, the demand for it was still too new. And so they would shoot for it, but then they would hold it. So there's probably footage out there, but it's archived on a hard drive somewhere.
I have lots of footage.
Oh, okay.
It's working with the footage that I'm still working on. Anyway, next question.
Sure. Roscoe wanted to know what is Alex using to keep his two T5 SSDs synced to each other or to the same master source?
I would love to say that I use something really high tech, but I delete one and copy the other one over. I just copy like I don't.
You do it completely manually?
I completely manually. I'm
too.
I'm too paranoid. Like I don't want anything to do anything for. I've lost stuff by having stuff doing it automatically, and I'm just so paranoid that I would rather have 2 hours or an hour and something of unsafety where I delete one and then I just take the other one and I copy it over. That I'd rather just have that every once in a while.
Pretty cheap.
I could. I haven't done that yet, but
A to B and then B to C and then C to A.
I could rotate them. I haven't done that yet, but I just
what Alex is getting for Christmas?
Yeah, Sky.
I think a DIT told me it was a Shot Put Pro, and it'll send out signals to two different things.
Shot Put's amazing for when you're pulling from drives to another drive. It's a great way to do a checksum and make sure all this stuff works. I'm talking about all my assets, though. I mean, this is a general folder full of things. It's not just shots. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, yeah, this is when I'd make my pitch for the newbies for Carbon Copy Cloner. Does two things for you. Whenever you're updating software, if you don't like what it does, you can go back one version quickly.
Right.
And secondarily, when you're trying to move data, it will do the checksums and make sure that the data is accurate.
We used to use Carbon Copy, and it works great. I just don't know it as well, and I'm just very I just want to move this is like the most important data that I have, and it is backed up. About once a month, it's backed up into a RAID. So so I have something that I'm changing every week, and then I have something that sits there behind it. So it's the things that I'm probably most attached to are on that drive. Go ahead, Bill.
+1 on Carbon Copy Cloner. I use that for the entire imaging of everything on set. We've migrated pretty much to Hedge, which is kind of equivalent of Shot Put Pro. But you want something that's doing that deep math checksums to make sure that every bit gets copied when the information is mission critical.
Next question.
Sure. I just gotta say I'm not a fan of what's the one that you use on set to pull camera data?
Shot Put.
Yeah, I was forced to use it on a project, and I just felt like somebody was over my shoulder telling me to stop running with scissors. I mean, I know the Finder. I'm not afraid of the Finder. And I was forced to use it because our insurance policy required that if we weren't using that on set, they wouldn't insure us.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, let's go next quick. We got to move quick.
Eddie Martinez, Sacramento. Hey, question: MixPre II, Series 2. Has anyone experienced USB connection issues? We were just talking about this. I found I need to reselect USB 2 on the MixPre to get the connection to wake up and be seen on my 2018 MacBook Pro.
Yeah, I think we've. Go ahead, Chris.
For a long time, every morning I had to unplug it, plug it back in, unplug it, plug it back in, and then it just stopped doing that. Now it just starts up with the computer.
Interesting. Yeah, with my Scorpio, I never do anything with it other than leave it connected. But now I use a Scorpio up at my house and a USB pre at the office, and so I'll keep an eye on it. But I haven't had that yet. No, next question.
Brett from New York, New York. Can Alex share some of his front of house large screen prompter setups from previous jobs, or describe the parts list?
I mean, the main thing for prompter is, I mean, these comfort monitors or confidence. In the US, it's confidence monitors. In Europe, it's comfort monitors that are up there that are or downstream or downstage monitor DSMs or downstream monitors or downstage monitors. I mean, to us, there's not that much to them other than we box them in. So you build nice little boxes so that they just look like a part of the architecture, and you want to match them in to make that work. I mean, typically they're 55 inches or bigger. They're not usually bigger than 70 just because it's cost ineffective. And usually you have your notes on one side and your slides on the other. And then somewhere between them, we usually have a DSAN timer. In there that's giving you DSAN kind of runs that world. You have a DSAN timer. We used to get techie about it, and there was some other countdown clocks we used on screens, but the DSAN timer just works, and everybody knows it. And if you don't bring it, I think a lot of people lose the idea that there is just a big part of production. Just don't be weird, and and I've said this before, but don't make stuff up when everybody's doing the same thing unless it's really good. Like, it has to be a lot better, and you have to be totally sure and able to prove why it's better to do it. And people lose track of when you use something weird and anything goes wrong, you're under the bus. So like, and so that, so you just have to know that you've placed yourself when you do something funky. So that's why people, if you use a DSAN perfect queue, everyone knows, oh, that's right. If something goes wrong, well, we'll figure that out. Use some funky little one, or use your iPhone or something like that, and it goes wrong, it's going to be all your fault. So anyway, so you just have to kind of take that into account. We can probably talk about downstream monitors for a whole hour. Someone should put that in the suggestions, and we'll think about it for one of the wild cards. Next question.
Stan Chan says, trying to jam timecode into my Blackmagic 6K mic input from my MixPre-10 Series 2 using a BNC Timecode out. Wiring seems to be correct with the center to tip LTC.
Does that work?
Well, I think that's
Go
the
ahead,
question.
Mickey. I think you put it on a track, but I don't think you can. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, with the Blackmagic Pockets, you can definitely send the timecode to it. It will read LTC signals. His wiring says he has center to tip and the ground on the outer ring. Ground should be on sleeve. So tip would be LTC. Sleeve will be ground/shield. When you plug it into the mini jack input, it has to be the mini jack input of the Blackmagic. It will automatically jam. You don't have to do anything. One thing some people get confused about is they don't see timecode running. You just have to tap, because on the screen of the Blackmagic, you will see the record time, the elapsed time of recording, which if you're not rolling, it's just 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. If you tap on that number, it'll switch to showing the time code that the camera is on. So when you plug it in, it should automatically jam.
And we're gonna. I wish someone had asked that question 2 weeks ago. That's all I gotta say. So anyway.
I just want to say, wow. I just should
so
have
anyway,
asked, what's the right lottery ticket number? Because somebody in this panel will know the answer.
Yeah,
It's
no,
crazy.
that was a great answer, Ricky. I was like,
Nice,
I just didn't think it worked, and so I was just like, oh, and we had.
I don't know if anyone here could that's on a pocket could show us the interface, but you'll see the number on top.
Is that LTC?
It's just 0, 0. Yes, LTC time code.
LTC, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, we're going back a ways.
Mickey is the master.
For those of you who don't know, they used to put time code on an audio track of the old beta cams, and you could hear it. You could listen, put your headphones.
While we're going to finish up the last questions. While we're doing that, let's go ahead and have our educators raise your hand. So if you want to jump into the next hour, sorry we're running a little over, but we'll have you start raising your hands, and we'll bring you in. Go ahead. Let's go to the next question.
I was going to say, I'm sorry I didn't recommend Mickey when you asked me for an audio engineer locally. John Idelson from Monterey says
he had to be on site.
Hey, planes exist. What do you think are the things that conference centers can do to change their business model? What should they be doing now and in the next 6 months?
Build studios. build studios to be able to do this. That's what they should be doing. They should take advantage of what they have and build a way for people to broadcast out of it. And COVID ready studios would be super useful, that are built for that thing. They are pretty quiet when no one's there. so they, they're usually in a place where that would work. But I would, look at how they support their community with, no one has those studios. So modular studios that are adjustable, and having 3 or 4 big rooms would make a big difference, because you want distance. They have all the things that you want. They have the power, they have the connectivity, they have all the things that they need to build a great set of studios for people to use so that they can broadcast out their event or their individual bits and pieces. The big thing is building modular stages. I mean, we designed these. I mean, like literally designed them looking for investors, you just want to have a small group of people able to come. Because to me, everything over 300 is a waste of time, of people. And because if you just build for the next generation. Go ahead, Phil, and then Jeffrey, real quick.
I'd love to give a little tour of a really great one in New York City.
Yeah. When are you going to do it?
It was there yesterday. It's beautiful. You got to see it. It's really, really beautiful. And I think it would really be right up the alley of everybody here.
Let's see it. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Which one is it?
Damon's.
Oh, Damon's. When I was there, it was under construction.
So it's beautiful. It's finished. It's really, really nice. We're doing an event. We're setting up for an event there.
Did he end up doing green screen on that far corner?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. No, I would love to do a tour of Damon's space. It's great. Yeah.
And it's a good example of how, the studios are the modular and all that thing. It's really, really cool.
Let's definitely do it. No. That's in downtown New York.
5th Avenue. Yeah.
Yeah.
360. Take in your 360.
Damon knows how to do it well. Like he knows how to do it right.
We'll get him on and we'll do a walkthrough.
Let's figure it out. Yep. Absolutely. Jeffrey.
If conference centers have the pop-ups and be able to put them with glass windows, that's probably a good idea. But the decent internet is probably good, because there's no way to set up a room that will work for every single situation. You have to move things around.
Most of the conference event centers that we work at have gigs, like 10 gigs in and out, and they have the switch, and they have all these other things that are there. They have all the things that we need to do this. It's just that, and you look at all that dead space, and all I think of is, wow, I could build a lot of really cool studios and events and experiences, that we could use. They have to figure out their cost perspective too, because generally working in a conference center, we just feel like we're going to get hosed, so they have to figure out the pricing that makes sense too. Anyway, next question. We're going to go through these real quick, and then we're going to go.
Roscoe says, what niche should a small operation crew of 2 stake out in this new micro broadcasting era? I have 2 former students asking me for ideas.
Zoom. That's the first thing I would do, is figure out how to do what we're doing for clients. A lot of them are trying to figure it out. When I'm running, we have small events that we do, but but for crew of 2 right now, we have small events, and we send out kits to people, and we get them ready to go. And for that, there's a higher end version of Zoom, more than I'm just going to jump on, that there's a massive market for, because once someone sees it, like, oh, when we give everybody mics and cameras and lights, they suddenly can't go back. They can't go back to what they had before. And then they want to do it. And it's not just oh, we're running a Zoom. I've got Mimo Live running into it. I'm running their videos. I'm putting up stills. We're having, there's a production, there's a run of show. There's a, that type of thing. Eventually that will grow back into putting cameras and people on every end, and it'll be a different thing. But what I would do is understand how an online interactive event occurs. Next question. I'm just going to go quickly.
Sure. A. Mitchell says, would Alex put together a document for the Discord with a list of suggested film class movies and the recommended content? What we should talk about.
It'll probably take me a little while to get to it, but I'll put a list somewhere. We should probably build something in Discord of just recommended resources, like movie references, or movie reference resources, or something that we use for learning. And I'll start it, and then everyone else can contribute, because all of us use it for some of the
movie reference for learning. Love it.
Yeah.
Yes,
All
I
right.
did a similar thing too a few years ago, so I'll bring my old files up.
That's perfect. All right, now we're going to shift gears a little late, but better late than never. And we're gonna move on to education. We've got a couple questions coming up. So this is all. The rest of this conversation is going to be around education, virtual learning. It doesn't have to be just K through 12 or university. It's just general e-learning and teaching. So if you've got questions around that specifically, then make sure to throw them into Makana and allow us to see it. I'm seeing myself. Tony is sending me back to myself. He's figured out how to do something that's important, but it's very confusing for me. Anyway, so the go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to take just a minute. Like I have a video here of me jamming a Blackmagic Pocket.
Yes, please. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Last thing before
let
going to
me-
education, because
let me
just
just
because we talked about it.
spotlight
Okay.
this. So I'm not gonna play through the video because audio is not
'Cause
set
it's
up
vertical.
on this. Yes, and it's vertical video, but so I have my timecode generator there. I have a cable plugged into the mini jack input of the Pocket. So at the top there, you see just 000. That's the elapsed recording time.
Yep.
And as soon as you tap that, it switches over to showing the time code.
Got it.
So yeah, as soon as I plug in my generator, it says 104604 there on the timecode generator. As soon as I plug it in,
Keep your day job, Mickey. That's an awful
Yeah.
video.
this was just a quick tutorial I sent over to another friend, like think
I
a
know.
year or two ago. So I plug in my generator, and then it just automatically jams. And I think there might be
there it is.
a little jam, a little sync icon that shows up in the camera. I'm not
That's
sure.
great. Fine.
But yeah, you just have
2
to click
weeks
that
ago.
number.
2
That's
weeks
great.
too late.
It's fine. I got a digital slate, so it'll we'll figure it out.
Everybody
Anyway,
gets to take pictures with it on set.
yeah, exactly. All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Kudos to Mickey for digging up that video from a year ago.
Yeah,
Nice job.
exactly. Well played. Well played. All right, so we're moving into education. Ask your questions, or it'll be a really short conversation. There's not a lot of questions in there right now about education, but I'm sure we'll think of something to talk about. Go ahead, Chris. What questions do we have to start off with?
Let's see. First one would be Craig Hibbard says, what is a good Zoom upload speed for teachers and students? Where I live, the average upload speed during school and business hours has dropped from 6 megabits per second to below 3.
Zoom, when left to its own devices, will attempt to use 3.2 megabits per second in our experience. So that is where it wants to get to. If it doesn't have that, of course, it will give you a lower resolution that it can manage. But when left to its own devices, it's 1280 by 720. The reason we're getting that is because the DB East conference room is here. So that's going to push it to it, and it's 3.2 or 3.3, somewhere in that 3.25, something like that, is where we see it kind of want to go to. Now, for schools at a quarter of that resolution, we've definitely seen Zoom survive at 1 or 2 megs a second. It just will give you a kind of a more nasty 640 by 360 image. But what we would say is what you want if it's looking for 3.25 is you want 6.5. So you want twice. You're looking for twice that so that, because you've got email and you've got things and other things in the house or the office or whatever that are using stuff. The problem we have is I've got 4 people. I've got my wife runs Zooms for a living, so she runs Zoom meetings most days, and so she's doing that. She's actually much better at it than I am, and then I'm doing this stuff, but now I'm going down to the office more often. And then my kids each are on either Zoom or Meet for school. So our requirements, we have just barely enough. I'm a little selfish and I have my own internet connection. So, but they have to, they share the Comcast uplink, which is 10, and it's just barely enough. Go ahead, Jeff. Oh, I can't hear you.
Just a reminder that for Zoom, they need to be on wired Ethernet, not on Wi-Fi. So the speeds that they're seeing on a speed test will show them, over time, but Wi-Fi is going to have those dropouts
and Wi-Fi
those stalls.
Wi-Fi is worse at lower bandwidth than it is at higher bandwidth. So the stalls that are initiated in that system get much worse when you're on low bandwidth. So you really want to be wired. It's really worth finding a way to wire yourself. Wi-Fi was never made for synchronous video. Like it's just not the way the protocol is set up. And so you will find that if you are in the middle of rural areas, you can actually get away with Wi-Fi with almost, and no one's moving around. People will say, well, they're not on my Wi-Fi. It doesn't matter. If your device can see a Wi-Fi access point, it means they talk to each other. They're sitting there chit chatting all the time. They're like, you know, they've got a lot of small talk going on there. And so that's why you know it's there, right? And so it doesn't matter when you see 40 Wi-Fi spots, that means they're all talking to each other, you know, and that's what's causing it. So in the city, and especially in a business organization, and then as people walk past your access point, they're all talking to them too. So there's just this incredible amount of chatter that's going on inside of Wi-Fi that has nothing to do with your bandwidth. And so the more isolated you are, the less you are susceptible to it. And but it doesn't. But if you're definitely in a city, it's bad news. Any other questions about that? Any other comments? Nope. Okay. Next question.
Chris Clark says kids are returning to school buildings in New York City and elsewhere. Moms are finding that the youngest children are liking it best. Older kids tend to resist the heavy control, social distance, mask wearing, etc., etc. Any similar early returns in your area?
My kids are still at home. They don't like. I mean, they want to go back to school. I mean, they're 11 and 12, and they miss their friends. So they, you know, and then we had a little scare that they go to they had like a Wednesday night where they hang out with kids, and one of the pods, not their pod, but one of the little pods of those got COVID. So then everything had to, you know, like, so it's they're having a hard time with the socialization, you know, process. So we're playing a lot more Scrabble though. Anyone else having kids going back? I haven't seen a lot of people change it. It's interesting. I mean, I know that everyone's under a lot of pressure to go back, but going back during flu season doesn't seem like the thing that I would do. Go ahead, Garrick.
My kids aren't going back yet. My son's in virtual, but my older daughter is not excited about going to any place that's public, and let alone school. And my son is just raring to get back to school and be with friends. He's 10, my daughter's 17. So, you know, the age difference, I think that's probably a true thing, but yeah, that's just our experience.
It's definitely going to be a social, you know, it depends on how social the kids were. I mean, I know that I would have had zero interest in going back, you know, pretty much my entire time, you know, like I didn't have any need for that. I was, but I think that some kids are just not very social, and they, you know, and school is hard for them. You know, I think we say, well, there's a lot of kids that are suffering. Well, there's a lot of kids that aren't suffering too. You know, we have to remember that you know, everybody's different, and it just changes the environment. Go ahead, Bruce. I can't hear you. Still can't hear you, Bruce.
You got this, Bruce.
Your sync is perfect.
All right, let's see if did that get it? Now I'm unmuted. Yeah, in Florida, they have just announced here that all of the students must go back to school. So I'm not sure it matters anymore, because at least here, they have changed the rules, removed all of the restrictions, and everything is opening up as if there were no COVID at all. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Well, it's the interesting thing about the United States. Everyone gets to experiment state by state. They get to be little guinea pigs in that process.
The republic by which we stand. It stands.
Power of this country. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, it's a little different. We had a show that it was only a 4-person show. It was a musical, and it had an opening weekend, and then COVID hit. And so they never got that sense of completion. So last weekend, we spent 28 hours with 4 cameras filming it, putting it all together, and they loved it. They were so excited that they got to put a completion or put it back together. So I think anything that feels unfinished, students are just going to automatically want to get back to. But I think it's the new stuff that they're a little bit afraid of.
Yep. And one of the things that I'm having trouble with is I tend to be a little bit, my kids aren't on the internet all the time. And so now I'm going through this whole process of slowly opening the router, so, at 11 and 12, and trying to figure out where, like, they need to be on more often than they were. Because for me, pretty much there was like an hour that they could go on, because I just think that the internet is a cesspool. And so now I'm kind of I'm doing a lot of research with OpenDNS so that they can be on all the time, but on a very limited, access schedule, so they're not on random stuff. It's just easy to get stuff into your head that you can't get out. Next question.
Bruce Francis from Naples says, hey, Bruce, what would be the implications for our education discussion of distinguishing between online learning, online teaching, and online schooling?
Talk about that a little bit, Bruce.
Muted
Still
here.
There we go.
There you go.
Nope, you're muted again. There we go.
Oh, I got it. Okay, good. Yeah, superficially or at the beginning, online learning talks about what happens with the student. Online teaching, we're discussing how easy it is for the teachers to work, and online schooling is, I think, about the whole social role of education in creating cultural values, and it's more of an administrative and an economic kind of concept. And if we don't distinguish between them really clearly, sometimes we can go off in a lot of different tangents and not focus in on what kind of real benefits there are for what constituencies. I think that.
And Bruce, you're breaking up a little bit.
Go ahead. I'm
You're,
sorry. Is that my?
Your audio is breaking up a little bit. But yeah.
I'm on wired.
It just sounds like an audio problem, not a connection issue. I'm not sure what your mic is for that, but it's not
I'm
working
hearing
great.
it too. It isn't working great. So go ahead. I think that's enough at this point to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that other people can jump in. I mean, I know that as a parent, I'm not super excited about schools taking any leadership role in socialization of my kids. so there's a whole lot of I think that they should stay in their lane, as a parent. I'm in California, and they're pretty aggressive about getting into my lane, and so, and I'm a pretty rough parent when it comes to that. I send pretty pointed emails, and, don't want my kids. I mean, I feel like for me as a parent, math, history, English, those kinds of things, stay in there. Everything else, stay out of my space. So I think that that's the hard part in the schooling area, is that there's a lot of parents like me that would like them to back off, and go ahead, Chris.
A distinction that we used in research on teaching and teacher education is between instruction, which sounds like what Alex prefers. That is, my job as a teacher is to move you through a curriculum with defined objectives and staying inside the boundaries of English.
And I think you can have a lot of conversations about that. I think inside of English, there's a lot of conversations you can have. I think the thing that I get into is having whole classes about things that I don't think are useful or not the way I would teach them.
I get it. So that's, but instruction, teacher as instructor seems to be one preferred role for some segments or even for some subject matters. That it's instruction, that implies bringing the class along through a prescribed curriculum, series of subject matters and exercises and aspects of mathematics or history or whatever it may be. Then and that's well ensconced as one of the responsibilities of school boards is adopting and approving curricula. These are the plans, these are the textbooks, these are the objectives, these are the tests that we're going to use to create accountability or to identify who's doing well or who needs additional help. Then teacher as a leader of a learning community is another kind of role definition, where certainly a lot of what goes on in a learning community is learning about curriculum, and it has implications that are broader than that. It's how do you cultivate this community of future citizens or even current citizens in a way that they can continue to talk with each other and interact constructively and step into the larger society as they graduate,
right?
As productive operators who
Right.
know how to take turns and know how to listen respectfully to a point of view different from their own, and so forth and so on.
Crazy. That's crazy.
I know it's crazy, but it's another framing of what it is that teachers do, what their responsibilities are. It shifts from elementary school to middle and high school, where there's more of this community feeling in elementary school tends to be, and it gets more siloed as instruction in subject matters as you move up through high school.
Right,
So that might be helpful, Bruce, in talking about how you prepare teachers, how you support them in their work, or how you become labeled as a difficult parent if you're drafting emails that Alex described himself drafting.
Pointed. I mean, and in general, I will admit that I believe that we try to teach our kids too much in school. Like, I think that they need to be given more time to think and we need to, there's this obsession with looking at, these different school systems that just pack everything in. I'm just kind of like, if we think about all the things that we don't remember from school, like how to do, we don't remember any, we don't remember 70% of it because we never used it again. And so the thing is that I kind of feel like we should make sure that 30% is absolutely covered, maybe 40 or 50% of what's there, and then give kids more time to create and figure out what they want to do and do more electives rather than what we do now. Go ahead, Jeff, and then Sky, and then John.
Speaking to the online schooling and the job of a school providing that social thing, I agree with you. School needs to stay in its lane, and that school can't force or make part of curriculum the socialization of students. I know that in the March and April, right when we were going with the initial lockdown, my students were starving for just human contact, and we would have a Zoom meeting of office hours, and the students they weren't there with questions, they were just there to talk. They just wanted to be heard. Now they're resilient. Kids find their own social. And so they've developed that, in this new normal, they've found their own ways to make connection. That's not something the school needs to dictate about how we're going to socialize. So if it's online school or it's in-person school, let the socialization between the students happen naturally. It will. The school doesn't need to be in that job. They're in the job of
I think
instruction.
The one thing I will say about that is that this is it's a much easier job to do in this realm because A, I'm not stuck with people who come in and don't agree, and B, we're all, generally all adults, that are inside of what we're doing here. And I think that but if you look at, we have decided that there's a pretty tight code of conduct to interact with inside of office hours and inside Discord. That's probably much more rigorous than most of the internet. As far as how that works. So I think that there is a subtle socialization that school can have of this is how we present, this is how we present ourselves, a certain structure to it that gets back into that. Whereas the overt teaching that, I don't think is necessary, other than saying these are the places we're not going to go. And they're relatively clear. Is that
classroom etiquette?
Yeah, classroom etiquette. And I think, but that teaches people how to be good citizens as well, beyond having to teach them, tell them. It's just like there's little things that this is how we're gonna. I will admit, my daughter was going to this like blue ribbon school or whatever, and I was kind of amazed at how much, it was both amazing and scary. Like they would do this thing where they would go the quiet coyote or something like this, and you see them going like this, or no, they would go like this. And I was like, do you know what that means? Like, it's not quite the same thing, but they would do this thing where they go like, and all the kids would go, and it just, but it was it wasn't so much that they were teaching, it was just a code of contact of we're going to now be quiet, and so I think those are useful. And I think those are harder to do online, to get back to what Bruce is talking about. And we'll go to Sky and then back to you, Bruce. But I think that, I'm sorry, John too, Sky and then John, then Bruce. I think that the online teaching and the online learning though are very integrated. Like to me they are. Like they're not two separate things as much as we have to figure out this dance that is the teacher and the student, that we have to figure out who's doing what steps and who's doing the other one, and trying to have them learn to dance on their own is difficult, because it's really this interaction between them that is super important, and that dance is really complicated. And I think those two pieces are very integrated, and I think I would have a hard time separating them in my head, because I want to think about how the student's going to hear it as I'm putting it out and how I'm going to get that feedback back. Go ahead, Sky, and then John, and then Bruce.
Well, as I hear you talk, Alex, I'm just curious about your nature versus nurture, and how you were raised with a two-parent system with high expectations. Sounds like your bar was set pretty high, and you lived into it. Also, I do want to give voice to Trevor Walker, who in the chat stated, "We would love to stay in our lane in California, at least in my district. We are just mandated by the state and expected to be parents by many families."
Right. No, I'm not disagreeing with you there. I mean, it's not the teacher's fault.
I'm relaying.
Yeah, no. I'm saying to Trevor. I know it's not you. That's yeah. Anyway, John.
Whenever politicians try to help education, it's scary as an educator. I think there's some sanity coming from the other side of the pond in a lot of areas. So the EU has just started a digital education action plan for the years 2021 to 2027. And its title is Resetting Education and Training for the Digital Age. And so they're convinced it's not going to go back to what it was. And they're saying we have to actually plan for this. And they have 4 simple, main enabling strict needs, infrastructure first, then capacity planning and building, not only hardware, but organizationally. Then they need to have digitally competent teachers, education staff, and training staff. And then the last part is, once you've got those, you can start developing high quality content that's user friendly on secure platforms and shared. And then they go on to talk about how are we going to fund this. But, they're actually assuming it's going to happen. They're opening it for public consultation. I wish we had a plan like this, rather than fighting about whether we have to send kids to schools, whether our parents have to do that. It's a 21-page document, and I put it into the Discord link.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah, we'll definitely, I'll take a look at that. Go ahead, Bruce.
My real interest in all of this is to ask the question, for which of those 3 dimensions, the schooling, the teaching, and the learning, is the remote, the computer, best suited? And I think, Alex, you've made the point over and over again that if there was some way of putting students into a gaming situation, the proper kind of games, the learning is much faster and much better. As we've seen from the necessity to be remote, teaching is a struggle remotely for most people. It's just something that teachers have not yet learned. They'll get better and better at it. And the schooling process, it seems to me, is heavily devoted towards socialization, a lot more heavily, I think, than most of us are comfortable with. I remember Robert McClintock, a famous educator, once wrote that the school is the pedagogical agency of mass production, trying to bring about a commonality of social values across even the entire United States with our national curriculum and the kinds of things that we try to teach. There are regional differences, but I think we have to be clear that the school is trying and is designed to bring about socialization. And for that, you often need the group involvement, the physical presence. So the computer is at best of ancillary use. It seems to me that where we want remote learning to become more and more important is in the learning dimension. Well, and the kinds of things that we can do to make that happen, it seems to me, are important.
I mean, and I think from a socialization process, I've really been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of weeks of the nature of evolution is customization at a local level on a constant basis. It is the nature of all, of the nature of nature, right? Is not that there is one kind of bird that goes everywhere, or that there's one kind of dog that goes everywhere. It is plants and animals and everything else constantly evolving based on their input, in that one location, and I think that one of the things that, whether it's statewide or whether it's countrywide or international, the idea, and this is very different from what I've thought about in the past, because I think it would be easier if we just standardized everything. But I'm not clear that that's the case. I'm not clear that because I think what's happening is as we try to federalize all these things, and I think the reason I'm bringing it up now for online is that there will be an attempt as we start to move forward to further standardize across the country, because you'll just be doing them virtually. And I think that what you're seeing as that happens is a lot of parents taking their kids out of school. They don't want to play. And so when you do that, it's that whole, how many star systems will escape as you close your hand, the from the Star Wars thing. But, parents are choosing homeschooling, parents are choosing private schools, parents are the ones that can afford it, and the ones that can do that. And so you're getting this, separation of the students into very different views of the world, because we're trying to make it something that's natural. And the reason I say that again is that it's important, because the next step, once we start figuring out how to do this digitally, what we're going to, I still believe what we're going to end up with is, hey, I can go to 1,500 students at one time, and now I can have a whole staff. So it's not a teacher trying to survive. There's a teacher with a production staff that you can afford. You can't do that at 15 students. You can do that at 1,500. You can have a whole, and then there's videos, and there's interaction, and there's online infrastructure that changes dramatically how that works. But we have to think about how that affects all the different locations. I think that, and I've said this before, but I think that really that we're talking about, for me, when I think about school, the next generation of school, I think of movies, games, discussion, and projects. So they're watching movies about things, they're playing games, but like really same level of games that they play today, on their Xbox, not these goofy little education games that I see coming up. They have discussions with teachers, so they're discussing those issues with people who can discuss those powerfully, and then they're having projects with each other on their own to figure that out. And I think that figuring out those are the food groups that we have to figure out how to solve, with that process. But I do think that I'm not talking about gamification where we're coming up with little games that we can play in class. I'm talking about games that are, and there's no testing, because I think that between those four, you can figure out where someone is in real time. I can tell exactly how they're going. I can see trends with big data. I can see trends about the students that are having trouble in history and English at a whole different level than, and what it doesn't, it means that the students that are really above average move very fast through the system, and you don't spend much time on them because you don't have to. The ones that are having trouble, you have plenty of time to get to them, and apply more resources in any given area that they may have trouble with. Go ahead, Sky.
So I'm curious, I need to preface this. I believe teachers are there for the students. I think that's their heart. They wouldn't have chosen such a poor paying job if they didn't have a passion. My question, however, is how would you incentivize a teacher to adopt that model? Because teachers in that model would get paid $250,000 a year. Because it's a whole different breed. It's a whole different breed. But the thing is it would be very hard to be a teacher. At 1,500 students, to teach for 1,500, the difference between a local stage actor and a Hollywood actor generally is a big difference. I was a local stage actor. I'm not a Hollywood actor. And so the difference is that it would be much more difficult to be a teacher
because what is required of that teacher would be much higher, but the pay would be closer to doctors and lawyers. The reason actors suddenly started getting paid a lot more is because we had distribution. Before that they were not getting paid really well. It's the fact that you can multiply the fact that you can multiply their effort to millions of people or to thousands of people is what has them get paid more. The fact that teachers only get to 15 at a time makes it very difficult because you need so many of them. A small change in their salary is a big number. That's the challenge. That would be
I'm thinking of horses for courses as the phrase, because all of a sudden now we're betting on the one horse. I'm thinking of Tony Robbins. Is he worth the millions of dollars he's worth? I don't know, but he's got a lot of people believing in a thing that he's telling them they can do.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bruce.
Carrying that idea on, it seems to me, Alex, that the only effective way to achieve that is through corporate development. This is not something that the public education system is likely to do, but it could be done privately. We have examples in the college realm of these massive open online courses that sometimes have I saw one course I was actually enrolled in, a course in science. Then I discovered there were 60,000 people enrolled in that one online course. Now, it was not a course which involved much interaction.
That's the problem. That's the issue.
But that's a direction that corporate America can go toward, whereas I'm not sure that public school America is ever likely to do that. And so the evolution that you're talking about may be more fundamental than any of us even realize at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that a private execution of this is probably the one that will happen the fastest. Of that, whether it's for and again, you have the challenge is that you have a large number of disaffected parents. You have a school system that everyone kind of put up with because it was working okay. Now it's not working at all. And you have a lot of people looking for where they're going to put what's the next big thing. And those things are it's all like right place, right time. And that's why I keep on bringing it up. Like, they have to figure it out. These school systems have to, they really damage themselves by doing this whole, like, we're going to try to go back every time they keep on trying to go back to classes and not embrace what they're in. And if they have to pull back again, this chaos that they're creating in that system is setting up for what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not saying it has to happen that way, but they're setting it up. They're just this constant on off. We don't know which way we're going to go. If they just committed to what they knew they could do, and if they had committed to it in March, they would have been in a different situation. Now they're in chaos, and they're setting up for a takeover, and I don't know whether it'll happen. And it depends on whether someone gets decisive with $1 billion. But it's about $1 billion, and they would take the field, and I don't see anybody doing that right now. It's a lot of money. But that's the only thing between, a massive national charter system that begins to solve this. But it takes a lot of money to do it. It's not like someone's going to come up with $1 million and do it, because you have to build all that content, and all that infrastructure and everything else. There are companies that could do it. Apple could do it. Google could do it. Zoom could do it. But it would take that much, $1 billion to start it. And it's the only thing that's protecting schools right now is that high cost of entry. But it's they need to tighten this process, and I think that there's something very valuable about public schools, but I think that they need to. I don't know if they can make the decisions fast enough in the current system. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, interesting. Patrons. What are the thoughts of patrons? I'm thinking specifically of that video that was shown a while ago about Tech High down near San Diego, and how it basically took the Broadcom executive to sponsor that in order to get that school built.
It's a school. I mean, the thing that makes this work, though, is a lot of, building up a lot of infrastructure and content. It just takes, like, if you look at, again, when you look at Masterclass is that's what all of education could look like if there was enough money, like there was enough money in it. Again, they were shooting in our office. There's 50 people shooting, it's like a big, it's a big for 4 hours of content or 3 hours of content or whatever they're going to put up there. But you have to do that for every subject, and the big thing is that you have to figure out how you're going to, build all of that up. And that's once you get off the ground, because the thing is, if you're a charter school and you're not a private school, if you're a charter school and you're getting state funding against a charter system, you only have to build it up for a little while before it starts taking off, because your cost of execution is much lower on a day-to-day basis. And so then after that, once you have a certain amount of content, you lock it. There's no way to catch up, because it'll be billions and billions of dollars worth of content and infrastructure. And then at that point, the cost of entry to compete with that is $10 billion, and then $100 billion. And then it's not, it's a lock. Go ahead, Bill.
My issue a little bit with this, though, is if you go with that patronage system, my son was in a school that in Scottsdale, Arizona. Scottsdale, Arizona has a lot of money, and there were parents along with us who had infinite resources. And what you would see in that kind of system is that with that kind of economic clout coming from a single focus, the school tended to get the technologies that tended to benefit that contributor's students,
or what that contributor knew.
Yeah,
But,
and what they had faced, what they had seen,
right.
Whatever their students' problems were, they would throw massive amounts of money at it. And the rest of the class, or a significant portion of it, might not have had those issues. So they were fixing what was important for them. And I get that. And hopefully the things that these patrons and benefactors, hopefully it will stretch out so that if we move more toward those kinds of systems, they are paying attention to the widest body of different kinds of students possible, and not just solving the problems that they understand.
Yep. Go ahead, Chris.
One of the success stories of 100 years ago was what Andrew Carnegie did with his billions. He built libraries. He didn't prescribe what books would go in the libraries. He built the buildings, and he built them for places that most people had never heard of. But almost every town of 1,000 or more has a Carnegie library in it, and then the locals filled it with books and staffed it with librarians and made it into what they made it into. And the little library in some town in Wyoming is different than the library in Philadelphia and New York.
I couldn't believe it. I was in Kansas and there was a Carnegie library. It's amazing.
And they tend to be beautiful buildings,
yeah.
Usually as nice as the bank in those little towns.
Yeah.
So I think there's a message there, and that persisted, of course, at least for 100 years.
Right.
And the message seems to me to be that if a big corporation like Apple decides to do a takeover, it's more likely to last if they provide the infrastructure but don't prescribe the content.
Right.
That still has to have a local input and room for it to evolve so that it continues to feel right for students in Wyoming and the schools in Florida.
I still think that
feel right.
I still think Apple buying Disney and then using all that IP for education is like that's the end game, so to speak. So you have Tony Stark teaching physics. Anyway, John Middleton.
Well, just Alex, you were talking about some private sector taking over, creating a lot of this, but we have an analog for that in terms of the textbook publishers in the K-12 community. Pearson, Wiley, they were the ones who created all the content. It was state adoptions. They might do a slightly different textbook for Texas versus California versus New York,
right.
But they really were the common core before we had talk of a common core.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but this is obviously the shift from that print technology to whatever this new environment is.
I think that the challenge really is the interactivity. To get back to what was said earlier about MOOCs, massive open online courses. The issue with MOOCs, I've joined a couple MOOCs, like, I'm going to try this out, without having that visceral, like a place that I can ask questions in real time, that I can discuss it. And it's not just text. Like there's something about what we're doing here that is important, you know, that's more than Discord. But Discord fills in the gaps between this and that. You know, and so there's this mixture of, you know, we can discuss things that we can keep on having the conversation between these things. And then we have this live conversation that has its own energy, you know. And what's missing right now for this experiment that we're doing is more class-like experiences, which I'm working on. You know,
the MOOCs were much more successful. Students were much more successful at completing MOOCs when they set up a local coffee hours. Think global, but work local. There were small groups that came together. There's a professor who actually went to coffee shops all around the world to meet with his students.
Right. And if you think about, I think you can do the coffee shops, but I think we can now do it on whether it's Zoom or even just streaming. And you look at something like Makana or other things like that, where people can ask questions and have discussion and everything else. And you might have in a MOOC of 60,000, 2,000 or 3,000 people showing up at one time to have these discussions. And there is something about everybody thinking about the same thing at the same time that is powerful. You know, and I think that it's I think that's what's missing. I think that, you know, companies that I'm surprised haven't taken advantage of that are things like LinkedIn. You know, they've got LinkedIn Live and they've got LinkedIn Learning. And somehow there's no attachment to the two of them. I'm just like, that's like a fissionable material there if you just get it to lock together, you know. Go ahead, Chris.
I think what you're shading toward is that what we need is the creation of campuses.
Digital campuses.
Not classrooms, which is where I think the energy is now, but campuses that have an environment like the one we're in right now for office hours. So that's only one place, so to speak, that I could go, and then I can go to here and there and the other, get different aspects that contribute to my learning and my sense of connection to my fellow students and to my faculty and so forth.
And infrastructure would make a big difference. I mean, we were talking earlier in the first hour about what could conference centers do, you know, with their space. And one of the things they could do is taking a leadership role and being a digital campus where there are the extra cameras and the extra things that you have that can bring people in, whether it's educators that are corporate educators, that are university educators, that are K through 12 educators, of being able to get a hold of that space, have the cameras and the sound and all these things, rather than having it be everywhere. Now you have to figure out all the COVID issues, you know, related to that. But I think that when we get past COVID, we're not, you know, I think everyone knows we're not going back, right? And so being able to have centralized locations that you can use for broadcast, you know, to make it a much more visceral experience than us trying to do it from our bedroom. You know, like that's I think that's part of the problem that teachers have right now. Go ahead, Sky, and then we'll jump back to questions.
Your quick point is plan for rain, be happy when there's sunshine. And then I put that on top of your quote just now. Well, everybody knows COVID is a real thing. I guess
I'm not saying that everybody knows COVID is a real thing. I'm saying everybody knows that we're not going back after this. The amount of technology that's happening right now, I don't think we're, you know, we're probably not going to go back.
People that ride on horses and carriages.
But that's not part of business. Like that, we do that for fun. So a lot of things we're going to do now, we're going to still do for fun. We just won't do them for our, you know, we won't try to go. I went to my cousin's houses. I mean, I went to their houses on a horse, you know, until I was like 15.
I meant Mennonites, but anyway, that's a different.
Go ahead, Kev.
I was just following up from what you were saying, actually. The conversation you've all been having obviously is about the US, and I just sit here hearing, the same here, in every level. I've got a friend of mine who's head of year of a primary school, which I think is years 3 to 12 over here in the Northwest. And they've just had all their children go back. But the biggest problem is, of course, there's the parents, because they're going back in autumn. They're getting the colds and sniffles, and of course everybody thinks they've got COVID. So they've all been running to tests, pulling the kids out of school. Teachers are tearing their hair out because they can't maintain their groups and bubbles. And I was saying to Peter, you've got to think about realigning your teaching output to be able to be used online. And if that means, you know, creating a video version of your subject matter for a particular group, then that's what you have to do.
I think that one thing that we have, and I've said this a couple of times, but one thing we haven't really grappled with is how to use all the forms of media where they're best used for a holistic education. So we have live streaming for the discussion. We have videos to show you things. We have audio to talk about contextual things you can do in the background. We have text to do it, use as reference. We have, like there's all these things that can be, the idea is how do we use all of them, not how we use, right now we've mostly been text in live classrooms, very little of the other stuff. The videos were always something extra. So it's just something to think about. Stephen Kimbrough says, we are really starting to create a real divide between rich and poor, cities and rural too, much based on connectivity. So how do we not create a two-class system? I mean, I've said it before. I think that we need to turn the internet into a utility. I'm not usually that kind of person, but 1 gig of fiber to every house, just like a phone line. Like that's what we should be, that's what someone should be running on right now. In my opinion, but like you can still do all the 5G you want, but 1 gig of fiber to every house is just what, and it should just be a utility, and it should be just something we expect. 1 gig up, 1 gig down, and it would change the United States more than anything. It would be as big as the highways.
I think Andrew Yang was trying to do some of that in the last election.
He kept on talking about sending people money. Like that, no one took him seriously after that. John.
Well, I just want to tell Stephen when he says do not create a two-class system. We have a two-class system, maybe more classes. The gap in resources just in our state of California is amazing, from people who have literally nothing to people who have very sophisticated high-end fiber in their schools.
Yep. No, absolutely. Sky, there's a couple folks that talked about this a little bit. Sky, what are the top 3 things that you discover in this week's learning? Where, who, how? And also Tony asked, what are the recent success stories in teaching? So I think that those are kind of related. Anything that came up this week? Go ahead, Jeff.
I was asked to be a guest. Our large ensembles, orchestra and wind ensemble, have been having weekly meetings with guests that come in, concert master from New York Phil or something. So I was brought in to talk about recording with limited resources. And they originally asked me to do it as a hybrid event. I would be on the stage in our Performing Arts Center with a handful of students out in the seats, most of them on Zoom. And I pushed back on that, was like, let's just do it all online. And I was like, can we use the webinar feature? So I kind of modeled it after office hours, and I had some polls preloaded, and I came in, and basically the director of the orchestra was a panelist. I was a panelist, and he and I had a discussion. And then we had people vote up questions. And as their question came to the top, we brought them in as a panelist so we could see them and talk to them and get some additional info on that. And it was well received, so much that he's moving every weekly meeting into that webinar format. So that was a great success this week.
That's great. And did you find that I still think that the attention is better. You're more engaged with the online audience when there's not a hybrid.
That's why I really wanted that. I was like, how am I going to focus on both groups at the same time?
Yep.
And we did have the chat. I encouraged them to use the chat, and people were answering questions when I couldn't think of an artist's name. People were jumping in with answers for that. So the chat was active. And then people were voting up those questions, which was really helpful. I think people like to see their questions go up.
Yeah, absolutely. John Edelson, and then we'll go on.
I mentioned I'm part of this support faculty group on our campus, and we have these discussions. And during the discussions, there became complaints about parking and parking fees, because they were having their fees automatically deducted from their paycheck, and they were having a hard time getting their parking money back, and they were complaining about parking. And one of the faculty members said, "This feels normal. We're at a faculty meeting and we're complaining about parking." So the idea of the new normals, but people are beginning to think this is how it's going to be. But
yeah. Kate Gallagher said, I'm a K-5 science teacher, and I'd like to make some videos to use in lessons about observing local plants and animals. What basic equipment would I need to make that kind of video when I'm outside and moving around? If I have someone else to run a camera. the first thing I'll say is your phone. I mean, the first thing that I would, as you start doing these videos, I wouldn't feel like I needed anything other than that. The only thing you might want to think about is some kind of mic input for your phone that you can, get better audio from it. Maybe it's an excuse to get a newer phone, depending on what you have. I will say that what we've noticed is iPhone 8 and above is pretty good camera. They keep getting better, but I would consider using your phone. iPhone 7. I mean, the jump between 7 and 8 was like the big, and then after that it's just incremental. There's like a huge jump, and then after that it's just like incremental increases. But I would say I would start with your phone and think about editing. How you're going to edit it more than how you're going to shoot it. Go ahead, Bill, and then John.
I was just going to say the great Los Angeles studio musician bass player Lee Sklar has been one of the big internet stars of the COVID area. He's a bass player, has played on 1,000 records that you've all heard, but he's been doing this and he's built a huge audience and huge reach and huge success. And it was only last week that he confessed that he's done the whole thing from his iPhone. So he hasn't gone anywhere outside of that simple ecosystem. I figured out a way to play mix minus tracks of the things, and he plays live with it, and the performances and just his persona have been compelling. But the technology has not been the limiter for that type of success, so it shouldn't be for anybody else.
And to be clear, I did a tutorial on how to put our kit together for one of our shows, for one of our clients. I did the whole thing on an iPhone, whole thing was done on an iPhone, handheld, no, me just going, and going up and down and everything else. I didn't want to have anything else. It needed to be done quickly. It needed to be, pushed out of, this is how you build this kit. And the other thing to remember is that your phone is also on Zoom. So you can do live, you can do these videos, but you can also take your kids or your students into the wilderness and talk about it. Go ahead, John, and then Kev. And this will be our last question, because I got to.
Yeah. So I recommend they go to it's called Parts Online Resources for Students and Teachers in California, ports-ca.us. And these are our interpreter rangers. They're doing it with iPhones. They're actually doing exactly what she said. She's taking pictures of animals and plants. And I'll try to get a link to it. We have a number of the interpreters who then teach their students how to use their phone. So they say, this is how I captured this. Now capture it. So a lot of good examples of exactly what you said on the ports electronic field trips.
Kev, and then Guy, Roscoe, and Jeff.
I was going to suggest, as she wants to film plants and small animals, get a tripod. Have a tripod there, because if you are on your own, you can buy a £5 mount which put your iPhone on that pod, and you can get nice and close, and more importantly stable, because obviously the plants are likely to be small, and therefore handheld in close-up is not helpful, but a tripod will tell you the difference.
And one thing to think about also for plant life and so on and so forth is Joby, like a Joby that has like the little arms that you can wrap around something. The nice thing about that is you can get it into certain places. And time lapse, remember that there are things that you'll see in nature, especially from time lapse, that you won't see when you just shoot it. So the time lapse and slow motion are two different things. When you start stretching out from time, from what you're shooting, you can gather all kinds of really interesting things that you wouldn't see otherwise. And leaving time lapses on, I do a lot of time lapse, and you just suddenly notice patterns, notice nature, notice all these other things from that. Go ahead, Guy, and then Roscoe, and then Jeff.
Yeah, one of the biggest things for outdoor shooting is just the lighting. So being able to fill in that light, just taking a foam core bounce board, you can pick them up at Home Depot or an art supply store. Starting at like $29, you can get into some of these bigger ones, and FJ Westcott actually has some nice tutorials on their website, so you can take a look at those.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Guy stole it. That was my thing. Foam core.
Oh,
Just
okay.
bring a nice sheet of foam core.
These are you can get little lights like this. This is a Nan light, Litolite SC that they just sent me to test. And but little lights like this, you can get all different prices. I think this one's $80 or $90, but there's other ones that are different prices here. And having like a little something you can pop over when it's darker or stick in somewhere can also be really helpful. Go ahead, Jeff.
Remember that perfect can be the enemy of good. So don't expect perfection out of this. Make a video, make another video, make another video, make another video. Each one will get better and better.
I used to have a sign in my office that I keep meaning to put back up, but I've got all this gear all around now that just had iterate and dominate. You don't worry about whether this one's going to be great. You do it as best you can. You take a bunch of notes of what you didn't like, and then you do it again. The mistake people make is trying to fix the one that they're in. Don't fix that one. That's where you were at that moment. So do that at that moment, and then put out the next one. And that's what if you look at our, the evolution of this group, we started rough, and it was a big jump for me to get to Jeff's point. It was a big jump for me because I'm used to having to do really high-end video. It was a big jump for me to be willing to just kind of throw it up there and figure it out as we went, and it's been absolutely worth it. Now go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I just wanted to add Filmic Pro as a solution when you're using the iPhone.
Yep. Tons of control. It's the best $15 you'll spend, or $20 or whatever it is. It's you have so much control, over what you're doing. All right. If you have any other education questions, bring them up tomorrow because we're doing it again.
So
we're going to do more education.
When I'm holding out for the next iPhone, how much longer? A month?
No idea. No, I'm not gonna get into that one. So anyway, so no idea, and I don't even want to guess. So thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody here. I mean, everybody's doing great questions. I got at the beginning of the hour, and I was like, oh, I don't know if we're gonna have enough questions. We might have to end at 8:30. No, didn't. Got it all done. So, and had another great conversation about education. So anyway, so thanks to everybody who stayed and hung out and had this conversation. We'll do it again tomorrow, 8 o'clock. So we'll do it. It's the second hour. We're just doing a standard second hour we're only going to do the 2-hour general on Sundays. So second hour on tomorrow will still be education. And then in October, I'm not sure exactly which Saturday, but we'll start adding more tech stuff back into Saturday mornings. So that we took a little bit of a break, but we're going to pick speed up again. So anyway, thank you all. And we will see you all. We'll see you all tomorrow talking about education again, 8 to 9. Sunday is kind of the open day. We just talk about whatever comes up. It's more like the first hour, the early pre-show hour, but for 2 hours. But it can be tech, it can be whatever you'd like. And then we get back into the zone next week. Second hour to start back up again next week. So should be fun. All right. Thanks, guys.